I lived in my head quite a bit as a kid, dreaming of all the things that might happen in a perfect future. The science fiction of Arthur C. Clarke populated my imagination with lots of extraterrestrial possibilities. Popular mechanics magazines tantalized me with visions of how my inner engineer might one day help America compete with all the technical wizardry coming out of Japan at the time. And catalogs from Service Merchandise and the Bass Pro Shop helped me outfit my future home with all the technical gadgets, battery-powered thermal socks, and crossbows I would need for basic survival. As it turns out, I did not graduate with an engineering degree. I emerged with a double major in English and psychology and intentions of one day becoming a family counselor. My girlfriend was ready to throw herself into her professional life full-time for the rest of her life, first as a mathematician and then later as a practicing audiologist. Oh, and we didn't know whether children would ever be part of the equation, whether we would ever want to have or adopt kids of our own. And then we got married. I can't speak for Tracy, but the obligations of marriage pulled me out of my headspace far more than dating ever had. Up to that point, I had near total control over the fantasies I spun out in my mind about the future. And I could take steps towards that future without running my decisions by someone else. I regularly prayed about my choices, but it's easy to convince yourself that your course is the right one when you live in a bubble that you have created. I did continue to daydream about the future every now and then following our wedding, but it quickly became clear to me that it was important for a meeting of the minds to take place so that our respective visions of the future didn't diverge too much. Neither of us had an interest in living separate but equal lives running along parallel tracks. We hope to find some way to interweave our respective dreams and to generate new ones that we could pursue together. One writer of Proverbs declares that where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off all restraint. I think this observation is equally applicable to the committed lifelong romance. To keep our imaginations from straying too far towards other relational possibilities or personal and professional goals, it helps if we have a shared idea of where we're going and at what speed. I'm Paul Marchbanks, and this is the fifth entry in a series I'm calling Beyond the Honeymoon, Romance 101. Today's talk is entitled Shared Visions, More Dance Than Drill. I'm about to get a lot more specific and personal than I have thus far. As always, my intention is to provoke thought and discussion. I am not interested in telling people what to do. I am deeply committed to encouraging myself and others to be more introspective, to open up about difficult subject matter with our loved ones. Tracy and I have a mixed history when it comes to living out a shared vision. For one thing, we are very different people with distinctive skills and what some would consider to be incompatible personality types. For example, though I'm more introverted than I am an extrovert, I move into meaningful conversations with other people and it gets me jazzed. I feel more alive. Tracy recognizes the benefit of sharing personal things and often enjoys it, but it leaves her feeling exhausted. I emerge from the same experience energized that drains her. As you can imagine, this means that jointly committing to some kind of program or event requires a bit of conversation ahead of time so that we make sure that we each know what the other person needs, what is healthy for us to put forward at a particular moment in our lives, because this changes all the time. Over the centuries, some Christians have spotlighted Bible passages that suggest a hierarchy, like the notion that woman was made from man's rib and therefore is secondary to and primarily a support for her husband. This paradigm works great in couples who wholeheartedly embrace this idea of submission within marriage. Others, like myself, tend to emphasize mutual submission, the idea that both sexes were made in God's image, and the promise that in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. Tracy and I tend to look at passages like Romans 12 and Philippians 2:3 as equally applicable to both genders, both within a romantic relationship and outside of one. Accordingly, whether the issue is work or play, we have tried to embrace two principles. Principle number 1. In our relationship, there is a regular recalibration of responsibilities. I love that passage in C.S. Lewis's That Hideous Strength that says that relations between lovers should be more like a dance than a drill because the roles are always changing. In our relationship, this tends to be true. When it comes to chores, we ask ourselves, given this moment in our lives, who should be doing the laundry? Who should be dusting the house, taking the car in to get serviced, completing repairs around the house? And as we also had kids, we added to that who should get up at night to tend to a sick child, who should take the kids on certain days of the week to school or to extracurricular activities, who is working with them on certain subject matter if they need help with their homework. These are things which changed throughout our relationship with the girls when they were still here. The same thing applies to fun that applies to chores, because Tracy and I are notoriously poor at being able to decide what to do, because early in our relationship, we would come to a standstill. Either we can't figure out what we want to do, neither of us has a decided opinion, or we are trying to defer to the other one as an act of love. So we've made a habit of taking turns every week, and we've been doing this for decades now, of who's going to decide what board game we're going to play, or what movie we're going to watch, or if we're going to go for a hike, on a date. These are things that we decide separately, and then we might check with the other person just to make sure, but there's some leadership that is given to one individual every week, and it changes weekly. When the kids were here, this became, on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon where we all had time together, the question, whose day is it? We rotated among the four of us from the time the girls were probably 3 and 5, allowing each person to have a voice in choosing what we would do as family time. Principle number 2. Tracy and I are committed to digging ever deeper into one another's lives, to trying not to assume too much about this other person, even though we've been together for years. The disastrous marriage of Winnie and Adolf Verloc in one of my favorite novels, Joseph Conrad's The Secret Agent, provides a great example of what not to do. And I quote, "Their accord was perfect, but it was not precise. It was a tacit accord, congenial to Mrs. Verloc's incuriosity and to Mr. Verloc's habits of mind, which were indolent and secret. They refrained from going to the bottom of facts and motives." After about 5 years of marriage that were less than ideal, not hellacious, but they could have been much better, Tracy and I decided that we needed to change something. She described us as friends with benefits. I was deep into graduate school, very busy, and she was working a job that involved a lot of commuting every day. And we felt like we were missing each other. So we decided to create what we call deepening time. The way this looked initially was we would go on a picnic or sit on the back porch for a couple hours on a Sunday afternoon and just talk about what was going on. Bring up the issues that could be triggers during the week, right? Lead to an argument if not dealt with, and try to consider logistical issues, things about the girls, just difficult stuff, money matters, and work through that. Now, this actually became something that we did on the front porch after we moved to California, when the girls were of an age that we can trust them not to burn the house down. And when they were older, we started going on what we call pre-date walks, where on the day before a date, and our dates are usually pretty low-key here at home, we would go for about an hour walk and talk through all these things. There's something about moving that opens up the mind and allows you to talk when you're not staring each other down. You're not looking at each other seated, your body tense, but you're moving, that kind of lets ideas flow freely. And so we've been doing that. And now that we're empty nesters, it's not stopping. We actually go for 2 walks a week, one of which is committed to this kind of divulging the things which are hard in our lives, so that we can better understand where our loved one is, to kind of like taking their pulse. Despite the fact that, yes, we can sometimes complete one another's sentences, we don't want to assume that we know everything that's going on with them. We want our visions of life to align as much as they can. Even though we have different things that are happening, it's important us to be on the same page.